everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Pine Tar Podcast. My name is Jeff Ruprecht, founder and designer at Pine Tar Clothing Company, where we're celebrating the hustle and heart of baseball. So this week I'm solo again. So if you remember last week, we talked with Jim Tucker from Tucker Talks Turf. You can find him on Instagram and TikTok. He's a varsity baseball coach out in Nevada. But he's an interesting content creator in baseball, in that he just shows a lot of tips and tricks and things about taking care of your dirt field. And, there's a lot of life lessons that comes from doing that, and, from taking care of your field and taking pride in it, and how that kind of works through with how you probably play the game too. So it was great to talk to Jim and get his perspective, learn more about him and his path through the game. And so this week, though, while we work on another guest, which it was fun to have a guest. This week, though, I just thought we'll do a single one, just me again. But if you notice, I'm wearing my Spit Seeds Throw Gas Pine Tar t-shirt, which a lot of people have enjoyed, especially those pitchers that throw hard. But I want to talk about seeds, sunflower seeds, believe it or not. No, I just thought it was a cool topic because, the inspiration behind this shirt, I was just one time sitting down thinking and sketching out some ideas, and one of the things I started thinking about was my affinity for good sunflower seeds while playing and coaching over the years. And as a player, just remembering, it was like one of those things, like if you didn't have seeds, you just felt like you were like naked or something, right? I know for me, I always had a big handful that I was always, and I had some in my pocket, right? So if I was in the field, I could still grab some if I needed some. Obviously, between innings, would get those replenished. But when I was thinking about that, and there's actually a couple, I've actually done a Spit Seeds rake shirt, which I think is on the site. I don't remember offhand, maybe not. But it's such a huge part of, I think, being a player. I know when I coached, it was a big part of me coaching, and it was something that I had to have something to, I don't know if it was just it's anxiety related or what. Having had to have something to kind of nibble on or sit there and think through situational things with something in, a seed in my mouth. So anyways, this week talking about seeds, but, I remember as a kid playing ball. Like I said, I always had them, but I never cared for them. And honestly, when I'm not, I shouldn't say that. Sometimes if I'm doing yard work or something, I have some laying around. I might throw a handful in and do that, but I really didn't care unless I was playing baseball, whether I had seeds or not. And I wonder also how much money I've spent over the years going to the convenience store and getting seeds. But it made me kind of think like, well, I wonder where this kind of started, right? Because it's kind of an affinity to the game now, that it's something that I feel like it's, even to this day, it's still quite popular that you see. Well, I found out that this went back to probably the 60s and 70s became popular, and of all people, sounds like Reggie Jackson was one to kind of make it something a part of his game. I didn't know that, but it was like more of like an alternative to chewing tobacco, because I think and granted, there's still a lot of guys in the majors and stuff using tobacco and stuff like that, who are of age to do so. I might still do that, but it's pretty far in between. I don't see it a lot anymore. I mean, there's a couple guys still, but I remember back when I was watching the game as a youngster, there was quite a bit of it, quite a bit of the chew or in Sandlot chaw. You remember when the boys went to the amusement park and had some chaw that they had somehow got, and got sick on the tilt-a-whirl, threw up everywhere. But I just remember just as a kid, like starting to use, chew on seeds and stuff because everyone had them in the dugout, and as I got older through high school, when I played amateur ball, which I mentioned in the past, when I played town ball, I think that's when I really got into it when I was much older. Um, Man, I remember my tongue and my mouth would just be at the end of a game, it would just be like gross, right? It'd be just so much salt that your tongue would be all like withered up, and you couldn't get enough water to drink because you were chewing so much, chewing and spitting so many seeds, and so that was always crazy. Then I kind of got out of it for a while until I started coaching my kids, right? And then when I started coaching my kids more and being around it on the field more, and as they were starting to want seeds or friends had seeds, well, then I wanted seeds. And well, then I kind of got back into it. I was, spitting seeds a lot, especially when I was coaching. Now with the rise of turf fields, especially in Minnesota, where I'm located, there's more and more turf fields popping up. Of course, you can't have seeds on turf fields because it gets stuck in the workings of how that artificial stuff is set up, and so they don't allow that on fields anymore. But you get a good dirt field, and it's like game on, right? Or there's a lot of seed spitting going on. There's a lot of shaking out in your hand uh, going on, and so. But I always felt like it was, especially when it was a hot day in the summer. When you're drinking a lot of water, or you're drinking a lot of Gatorade or whatever it is to kind of keep yourself in playing shape. I also found that just the salt and stuff from those seeds, I felt like was like a good thing. I know for me, I was, everyone has their superstitions. I think when it comes to, actually would be a good one to talk about is on a podcast to be player superstitions. But I know for me as a pitcher, I always wanted to wear long sleeve shirts, even when it was like long sleeve tees underneath my jersey. I always had this worry that my arm was going to I don't know, blow up or something. So when I pitched, I always wore, and if I didn't do it, it I don't know, it didn't feel right. So even though it was super hot and I'd be obviously sweating my ass off, I always had a long sleeve tee underneath so, it was one of those superstition things. Same with seeds. You kind of felt like, oh, there's no seeds or I didn't bring any. You kind of felt naked. You didn't feel like you were, you had to have that piece, of your game was missing otherwise. So, but man, you kind of get good with it too. I know for me, and there's a lot of different ways people choose seeds. I've seen everything from there's a person that'll take one at a time and kind of crack it and then kind of crack the nut out of it and then throw the shells away that way with their fingers, which I always thought was weird. I was always grab a handful, shove it in my mouth, I look like a freaking chipmunk, and I would just let my tongue be able to grab it, split it in two, work out the thing, and spit out the shell. I kind of feel like you fall either in one of those two categories of either you're kind of more of a dainty kind of crack it and throw away the shell, or you're a flat out let's go to town and suck all the freaking gross salt and stuff off of it, and then spit out the rest later. I remember a couple of times too having it in my mouth so long that it would kind of get soft, and then if I didn't spit, I would just grossly just throw it out, spit it all, and it almost looked like you're chewing tobacco, right? But anyways, spit seeds, throw gas, spit seeds, rake. I feel like that's just synonymous with being a ball player is, sunflower seeds. I know, I don't remember back in the 80s or 90s, what brands we had. I mean, David's been around a long time, but I know I've never really liked the David seeds, and no offense to anyone from David. And I'm not saying that they're bad, but I didn't care for them. But I know the rise of the giants, right? The blue bag. I kind of remember those always kind of being around, probably in the, 90s into the 2000s. And of course, when my kids were starting out baseball, we're talking mid 2000s, that, they were definitely around that. But then that's progressed to, flavored ones. You got your barbecue, you got your dill pickle, and you name it now. They've got every single flavor you can think of. It's kind of crazy. Um, I kind of still, I mean, I don't mind a good dill pickle one or one of those other ones. Still pretty much a straight salt guy. The OG seed, still the best thing to do it. Even as a fan, like I've found myself like, you kind of go and you're like, man, I wish I had some seeds. And you got to get the spit cup because you can't just spit them in the. You got this, you got this gross cup full of seed gar. What do you want to call it? I guess seed shells. That's always been kind of gross. But what do you do, right? Like if you want to really enjoy some seeds, if you're not spitting them, you got to do something with them, or use a empty 20 ounce bottle and put them in there. Probably doesn't allow that to be recyclable anymore, so that's probably not cool, but is what it is. But anyways, the sunflower seeds has just been one of those staples of the game that I just I know I grew up with it. My kids grew up with it. I still see it. A couple years ago, I was at the College World Series in Omaha, and I met some really cool people. And one of the people that I met was the founder and owner of Chinook seeds. I don't know if you've ever seen the Chinook brand. This is probably a free advertisement for Chinook seeds, but if you've never had them, they're pretty darn good. Nice guy. I don't remember his name offhand. I think I wrote it down somewhere. I didn't prep for that part of the podcast, so I don't have unfortunately, but it doesn't matter. But they were giving away free samples of all their different flavors, and man, they were pretty popular. Part of the Omaha experience in the baseball village. So many people constantly there getting free seeds and talking about seeds. It was pretty crazy. And I brought some home myself. He gave me a bunch to bring home. I know Bobby Witt Jr. is a sponsor. He's one of their. They sponsor him, and so he's been in a lot of their ads and stuff. But what's cool about Chinook is that they're a lot less salt and more flavorful. And so it's kind of a different in a good way kind of seed to enjoy. And I think they're doing okay. But there's all kinds of brands have popped up in the last bunch of years that, trying to get on that boat and do it differently. But, nothing still beats sometimes it's those old crappy giants, no offense, but those crappy giants you get at the convenience store, it's still pretty darn good. So, anyways, I'd love to hear if you guys have any good seed stories. But I know I sure always felt it as a big part of the game, especially if you're riding the pine, at some point and you're in the dugout and you're doing all the dugout things. It was kind of one of those things you had to have. And I remember like the first times I was actually really enjoying seeds in high school. I was I think I was a sophomore. I got called up to varsity, and but I didn't get to play a whole lot. So my job was the book, which I actually learned to really love keeping a really good book. In fact, I along with my enjoyment of seeds, got kind of, I guess in a way, I kind of enjoyed doing the book when I was not playing. And so I got pretty good at that, and really enjoyed kind of keeping track of everything. And I can tell you that keeping a good book can be really beneficial, especially as a coach. And many of you probably already know this, but I have a really quick story about keeping a good book. Is when I was coaching my oldest son, I think they were like 14 years old. We were in a tournament, and there was some crazy call play made, and then they didn't get the balls and strikes right. I remember the umpires, there were some younger kids, I think, that were umping, and but I challenged why one guy was supposedly going to take a walk, and I only had him at a 3-2 count. and the umpires couldn't agree on what the count was. We had an infield ump, we had a behind the plate ump. They're both supposed to be taking, keeping track of that. When I asked what the count was, and they both had different counts, and we were keeping track in our book. I said, no, in our book it says that they're 3-2, not at 4 balls. And even the opposing team didn't have it written down. So I finally argued and said, well, if you don't know, and you don't know, and you don't know, I say we go with the 3-2 pitch. So they made them go back and back in the box because they couldn't prove that it was four balls, and the poor kids struck out, and they weren't happy. The other team was not happy, but proved the importance of keeping a good book. So if you're a player and you get stuck with the book, don't look at it as a chore. You should really take pride in that, and it's a good way to really get your head in the game, and enjoy some good seeds while you're doing it, because that's where I think what some of my affinity for seeds started was my time in the dugout, and then it carried over into the game. So sorry, I kind of diverged there a little bit onto bookkeeping a little bit. A good scorebook, but it's a good skill to have, to keep a good book and enjoy those seeds. So anyways, thanks for listening this week. I still would love to hear if you got any good seed stories or dugout stories, or heck, even some bookkeeping stories. I'm sure there's some out there, but otherwise, thanks for listening, and we'll talk soon.